Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Stories Between Us, where we analyze the psychology of the tragic movies and books we're going to be watching and reading. So today we're going to be talking about the anatomy of the tragic stories. Most of them follow almost the exact same or a very similar storyline, even though the ending might be different. This is kind of like the hero's journey of the tragic stories, because tragic stories don't just happen, they are built carefully and with precision, and each thing in the story means something. While previously we've been talking about the characters and us, this video is about the story itself. So most tragic stories begin with one of two things. It either begins with lightness, which is kind of like the rare thing where it's showing like their life previously, or their happy moments in their life now, or it begins with the narration, which is what we've seen thus far. It's kind of a mix of both. It's a narration and then it shows what their life might have looked like before and the happy things that are happening now before the tragedy really hits us. This is mainly to prepare us and the character themselves for what's happening. So in this part, we see characters laughing, we see them smiling, we see them out with their friends, or with their family, or simply living an ordinary day. So at this point, we're just given someone to root for. So for Katie's story, for example, she tells us about Charlie and she tells us about her XP. And so we want to root for her in what she wants, even if we know that it might not be possible, but it gives us someone to root for the rest of the story. Because at this time, we see them as a person and not a symbol or a disease yet, even though that's what they're telling us about. We see them as a person. Because here we learn their voice, we hear their quirks, their humor, frustrations. We see them as the person and their emotions. And in a way, if it starts darkly, it's more technical and showing you what's going to happen as opposed to making it feel more human. The beginning being happy and light also prepares us or shows the contrast for the ending. In the beginning, we also see their relationships and we see their dynamic with them. Like for Hazel, we see her relationship with her mom, and for Katie, we see her relationship with her dad very early at the beginning. This gives us an idea of who they are now so that we can see who they become by the end of the story. And the next thing that happens is that we have the meet cute, or we get introduced to the love interest or the other main characters of the story. This is mainly only for love stories like the ones we've seen so far, Fault in Our Stars, Midnight Sun. But in other stories and movies like Stepmom, I believe it is, I don't think this would be apparent in there, but I can't say because I haven't seen it. So a meet cute is just the initial moment where these two love interests meet. So for Hazel and Augustus, it was when they ran into each other about to go up the stairs or go in the elevator, or I don't remember what it was. This meet cute can be unexpected, it can be awkward, it can be poetic, mundane, it can be really anything. This may be really close to the beginning or the introduction. We may be introduced to the love interest at the meet cute, or we may see them before. For example, in Midnight Sun, we see Charlie way before he meets Katie, who is at the train station. This gives the audience a clear point of where both paths intertwine and when the story truly begins. This also gives us an early investment. We know this meet cute matters, but we don't know exactly why yet until later. This could set up a metaphor, a symbolism, or even just like a phrase that they share throughout. It could be anything. This is the beginning of the characters not feeling alone anymore, not being alone. While their lives were moving one way previously, now the course has kind of shifted and their story is going in a different direction now that they've met this person and this love interest. They see each other in the other person, or they see a life that they wish they had. Like for Katie and Charlie, she wishes that she can go out like him. Now, this isn't always about just love on first sight or connections. It's about the characters being ready for change or going through a hard time in their life, and now there's something that's coming in, making it more exciting, or making the interaction itself feel symbolic and important, because like I've stated previously, this is the moment in their lives where things shift and their life is now going on a different course. The first impression becomes sometimes the core of how they act around each other, and most of the time we remember beginnings vividly. We remember the first time we saw someone who's still important in our lives, and it's the same thing for the characters. It gives everyone, the characters, us, one thing, and it gives us hope for the rest of the story, regardless on if we know how it's going to end or not. It gives us a little bit of faith that things are going to be okay. Next thing that happens is usually the soft middle. This moment slows down. It can be the moment where they're just hanging out. It's like a montage of memories and get-togethers, and usually this is the calm and joy before the twist happens, which we will talk about more later. These scenes make us feel alive and full, and the same thing with the characters. This can be even a vacation, a date, a multiple. Like I said, it can be a montage. Maybe in this moment, us or the characters forget that there are even limits and that there is something going on besides this montage in their life. This is when we see the characters most happy and most like themselves, like they are not sick or that they are healthy. This moment, it's expanding the world instead of shrinking it into one diagnosis or to one person. Now it's expanded and we see a world where things are okay and that they will be together probably forever. This is when we see the characters truly falling for each other and deepening their connection. And now it makes the loss more personal. It's not just, oh, I met this person once and now they're gone. No, they are spending time together and they are having fun, laughing, and sharing each other's stories. So now it's more than just, I lost this person. It's, I lost one of the people that I care most about. And sometimes this turns the soft middle into look at everything they stand to lose, as opposed to something bad might and still will happen, because we're seeing everything that is on at risk. The soft middle mirrors a beautiful truth. We cling to hope even if danger looms over us. We most of the time try to see the good in things. We try to stay positive and have faith, whatever it may be. We don't try to focus on the bad because that's oftentimes too overwhelming for ourselves and our brains, which is often where the coping strategies I've told you about come into play. So the soft middle doesn't only entertain us, it gives us, again, something to root for, and it recruits us into their story. We want what they want, we break when they do, and it gives us something worth grieving when the ending inevitably happens. And then, unfortunately, after these moments, we have a disruption. This is the moment where softness breaks. Something bad happens to the main character, the love interest, to a friend that they know. It can be a medical emergency, it can be a call, it can be a loss. So after all that warmth and lightness of the soft middle, now we get a collapse, in a way, of darkness and of fear, because it's this, the point of this part is to remind us what the story is in the first place. This can happen either multiple times or it can only happen once. It just depends on what the story is. This is, in a way, the wake-up call of the story. It takes the cozy slowness of the soft middle and it shatters the version of normalcy that they had showed us. And now the threat that we have known since the beginning is no longer abstract. It is apparent, and it is right in our face, reminding us and the characters that there is still something going on and not everything is normal and as happy as they want it to be. This also contests the relationship. For example, with Katie and what's his name? Charlie. For example, with Katie and Charlie, we see that he hadn't known the whole story and now he just found out. And it kind of tested that relationship. Even though he kept coming back, he was still really upset that she didn't tell him. And it affected how she responded to him after that. She didn't text him, she didn't respond to anything. And someone else had to intervene in order for them to get back together because she didn't want to anymore. It also redirects the narrative. They can't go back to how it used to be, to the soft middle feeling that they had. Now they're more aware of what's going on, and they're keeping it in the back of their minds if there ever comes the next part, which again, I will talk about that in a second. And these disruptions will never be the same. We see that it's different for Hazel and Katie. They both had kind of a medical emergency, but one was a realization and the other one was, as Hazel's parents described it, just another thing. And it was interesting in Fault in Our Stars to see two disruptions. We had the soft middle, we had Hazel's medical emergency, and then we had the next part I'm talking about, which is the recovery, and then we had another disruption. Except it was less extreme and less scary and more of a calm disruption that led to the end of the movie. And in this moment, we are forced out of the denial that we felt in the soft middle and are forced to confront the truth of what is happening. Provokes dread, empathy, protectiveness, and instinct towards the characters, and yet we still keep watching because the danger is what makes the connection feel even more precious. So the next thing we have is a temporary recovery. So this is the period after the major disruption. So like I said, Fault in Our Stars has two of them. It's when Hazel has her medical emergency and then when Gus tells her that his cancer is back. So next thing we have is a temporary recovery, and this is the period after the major disruption. So for Fault in Our Stars, it was when Hazel could go to Amsterdam, and they were at Amsterdam after her medical emergency, or it was after Gus told her about his cancer and there were shared little moments that they had still. This is when hope may flicker back to life. It depends on the story. Fault in Our Stars, it wasn't so much. There was a lot of disruptions and temporary recoveries in that movie. It wasn't just like linear. It wasn't like Midnight Sun when she had that major disruption and then the rest of it was kind of like relatively happy and calm. But we get a little bit of hope even though we know it probably won't last, and it's less about healing and more about just breathing through it. It's a pause before the tragedy occurs. This is when the scare pulls back, the danger passes. The characters may just hang out, they may get a little bit good news, reassurance, and it may feel steady enough to hope that everything will be okay. It's a little bit like the false dawn of the narrative, but even underneath this calm, something still feels wrong and off, and we know it because of the disruption that we saw stuck in our heads still. So this briefly resets the emotional tone of the story. It's no longer happy and informational and romantic. Now it's more cautious. And because we and the characters saw what almost losing one of these characters feels like, every moment now feels deeper and sharper and even more important than before. And the emotional contrast between the soft middle and the temporary recovery compared to the ending and the disruption um, is what makes tragic stories so devastating, because it's not sad throughout the entire story. There's little moments of happiness and of calm and of even denial, and we get lifted up just to be dropped back down. This part often mirrors the soft middle, oftentimes with a bigger shadow behind it. Everything is tinted with a little bit of meaning, a hand held too tightly, or a borrowed laugh. Everything feels more tense and important and cautious. And this moment exposes how deeply the characters are still clinging to hope and maybe even normalcy, even if they can't really. This part of the story makes the story richer because it reminds us why the characters are worth grieving and feeling for in the first place. It reminds us that there is always ups and downs throughout life. It's not linear, just like how grief isn't linear. Regardless of the end, whether it's happy, sad, bittersweet, life has a way of making you feel happiest in your life and making you feel the worst. Like I said, maybe we have a few temporary recovery and disruptions, and then we get led into the final tragedy. This part is literally the whole point of it being a tragic story. It is a irreversible choice. It is a death. It is a final goodbye. Whatever it may be, it's the undeniable proof that their future cannot happen. At least the one that they wanted. The scene itself, it can be either loud and dramatic, it can be soft and quiet. It just depends on the story and what they're trying to go for. But either way, it is devastating. This is the moment we were waiting and dreading the entire story. This now forces a new set of questions for us and the characters, as opposed to it being what if. It is now, what do I do now? Because their previous plans and their illusions and goals have now changed and shifted because of this tragedy and how it affected them. It also pushes the story into the aftermath, which we're going to be talking about later. And it kind of gets us prepared for what's going to happen after this. It shows us their reactions so that we can see how they grow from it. And it kind of pushes the story into the work of grieving. This also justifies the investment we had in their story and in the characters. For us to feel pain and for loss to matter, they had to earn it. So grief lands because the love that we have for the story and the characters was earned, and all the emotional labor that we did throughout the story, it wasn't wasted because of this moment and how it landed within us. We have bonded with these characters, even the one that was lost or the ones who have left each other. And what we experience is kind of like a mirrored grief. This isn't real life, but our brains kind of process emotional fiction through similar pathways and mirror. And now we have a safe but still emotional and meaningful version of heartbreak. This oftentimes creates catharsis because we project our own fears, wishes, or paths onto these characters and their own experiences. And it's kind of like a psychological mirror, and it's a reminder or a confrontation or simply the weight of loving something or someone that is so fragile. Characters experience a fracture in identity after this happens. They must figure out who they are without this person now and how to go on with life after their experience with them. Some retreat, some may collapse entirely, like I've talked about, different grieving or coping mechanisms. And these characters' deepest feelings and personality may come out through this grief and through this loss, and we see it in how they respond. And oftentimes, like I've talked about, the moments before this should be the pathway towards this. This ending should not happen in isolation. The previous moment should have some impact on how you feel at the end. Because when you lose someone, whether it's through death or them leaving, you think about everything that you guys did together, right? And it's the same for the characters, and it's the same for us when something happens to these characters. We see the tragedy and we see that loss, and we go back and think about everything that happened in the story and how happy they were. And if we rewatch it, we try to see the foreshadowing even. And the way they perform the tragedy matters. If it's dramatic and loud, that gives us a different tone and shift than if it was quiet and more of a mundane exit. Either way, it works. And the key is that the loss reframes everything that came before and everything that will come afterwards. Next up, sometimes we have the aftermath. This could either be the very end of the story, like we see in Midnight Sun with Charlie and Katie's dad and Katie's best friend. We see a little bit of the aftermath. But sometimes it's the very beginning of the story, like in P.S. I Love You, I believe. So this section explores the quiet and devastating space that follows the loss or the tragedy. It forces the characters and us to sit with what has been lost and try to figure out how to move on and grow from it. The world keeps moving regardless of who or what has been lost, and even though the characters can't, most times we and they have to learn to. Sometimes this is the beginning, sometimes it's the end, and sometimes it's even the middle. Or it's almost everything. Like in We Live in Time, it was everywhere. So this template does not apply to some movies. So this is where the story shows more of the grief and the reflection and the fragile moments after the person is gone. Again, it's where they're trying to grow and heal from what had just happened. It shows the cost of the tragedy. It forces the characters into emotional honesty, and it creates a narrative space for closure for us and the characters. It also transitions the story towards the ending, whether it be healing or devastation or just like a bittersweet ending. This moment may even include a symbolic object or phrase or anything. It can be anything small or big, loaded with meaning of the relationship that they had or the thing that they experienced. It may be packing to leave, like with Charlie. It may be reading a letter for Hazel Grace. It could be returning to a place they shared, doing a bucket list. It could be anything that wasn't complete or that meant something to the person that they knew. These objects give characters a physical way to say goodbye to the person, or even to hold on to them and keep them close while they can't physically be there, they can emotionally. They may even discover something that they didn't know before, allowing the story to land and get some closure for us and the characters. This is the beginning of the process psychologists call integration, where grief begins to weave itself into the character's personality and their worldview. Their nervous system was previously flooded with shock, and they begin to process the event that happened, and they process it in waves, not just all at once. They just do it little by little, no matter what it may be. Like if they have a bucket list, it could be the step by step of the bucket list. We see what for us, we see what the character had, and now we see it gone. We oftentimes cry more here because we see the other character's reactions to this, or we see the letter that they wrote, keeping a piece of them with us, or we see just the emptiness in general. we see an empty seat. We see them moving on without them. And this is the moment where lives changed. We project ourselves into this stillness and experience our own feelings, and it becomes catharsis because it reflects the way we all mourn. It validates the messy parts of grief and it makes it more meaningful. And the next thing we see, if it's like P.S. I love you, this is the second part of their story. But for everything else, we may not even see this part. Anyways, this portion explores the slow, uneven process where characters begin to mend or heal or grow from the tragedy and learn to move on. Healing in any story isn't a miracle. It's a series of fragile human steps that feel painful. But in all, it's kind of a beautiful process because it shows how flexible we are. This is the part of the story where grief kind of steps back enough for life to kind of seep back in and for things to feel a little bit more normal again. And this is where they may go more into or start the bucket lists and the remembering and reliving memories, or maybe even keeping a promise that they didn't get to finish before they lost or before the tragedy happened. It gives us an emotional breath after the devastation. It kind of reestablishes rhythm of the life that they had before they either met the person or before the tragedy occurred. And it can reveal a depth of loss through the contrast. We see the before, we see the tragedy that happened, and now we're seeing the afterwards without them and trying to get back to the before. So the time this builds us up towards the emotional resolution. It gives us it builds us up to the acceptance and to the calm instead of the turmoil that they feel after. This could even foreshadow the growth that they have. It can include small glimpses of who the character may become, more compassionate, guarded, or even more hopeful. But either way, the outcome of who they were at the beginning and who they are at the end is going to be way different. Oftentimes, the healing process may feel guilt-ridden or fragile, even awkward, or even sad still, because they're still grieving and they're still trying to process the events that happened. This is when they may also reach new milestones, like the first day they go without crying, which may sound horrible, but it's true. This is just how grieving works sometimes. That's or being able to talk about them without breaking down. They may start rebuilding the identity they had before the tragedy occurred and before even they met the person, if that's the situation that we're in. They must learn who they are now, take chances, pursue a hobby or return to one, or even meeting new people. And this doesn't erase the pain that they feel or felt. It's only proving that something else exists alongside it. And as I will say in every informational video, healing is not linear. This is a common reminder that we need in daily life, and it is also true in fiction. Characters will backslide. We will backslide. Memory might reopen. There may be salt in the wound because of something that is reminding them of the person or a memory that occurred. A keepsake that they kept from them might send them spiraling. Tragic stories often honor this by making tragic stories show the 2 steps forward and then 1 step back. And in this case, we see that the characters still don't give up. They still try to move on and they still to go even when it hurts. This may also be when supporting characters are important, like the parents or the best friend of the other person. They don't fix the pain, but they are there alongside them. They are feeling empathetic towards the person, even if they don't fully understand what they're going through. They are sitting with them and saying, hey, I may not understand, but I will sit with you through it. This was shown in Fault in Our Stars, the book. When Hazel lost Augustus, we see her calling her friend, I forgot her name, it was like Morgan or Catherine, something like that. But we see her calling her, and I feel like that was something Hazel maybe needed, a friend in that moment, even though it didn't maybe work out as she hoped. Same with Isaac for Hazel. They were grieving together, and that's very important to have so that you're not handling this emotion by yourself. For the characters, healing mirrors what the psychologists call adaptive coping, which can be problem solving, it can be seeking social support, it can be emotional regulation, self-care, but either way, it is integrating their grief into their daily life somehow, or the objects, or even projects like the bucket list. This can either be healthy or unhealthy. If done right, it can be absolutely good to do and healthy, but if done wrong, then it can just be a distraction, or it can be overall unuseful. And then the last thing we have in these stories is acceptance. And that is accepting what happened, obviously, and no longer feeling guilty for moving on. This is a quiet, steady moment when characters stop fighting the reality and they begin to carry it without resistance. It's not forgetting, replacing, or even conquering grief. Most of the time, it's just learning to live beside it without shame and without letting it take over. This is when the character's relationship with their grief changes. The tragedy is still a part of them, however, it's not taking over their life, and they grew from it. It offers the narrative closure without erasing what had happened. The story ends without processing the character is magically cured. It is more of a process and not just something that happened. It creates a sense of emotional truth where the peace feels earned because of all that they went through in the aftermath and the healing in order to get to this moment. And it shows who the character has become throughout. It could also give us and the character a sense of hope for the future, because even though this person isn't there anymore, we see them moving on. And in a way, if we're going through the same thing, it gives us hope as well that if they can get through it, yeah, we can too. The characters no longer feel guilty for moving on and enjoying their life and maybe even loving someone new. They don't feel guilty for not thinking of them every single moment. For a non-tragedy example, in To All the Boys I've Loved Before, we see Laura Jean talking about her mom a lot, and there was a line where she says, there's moments where I'm just doing the dishes or I'm doing something normal, and I forget there was a time where my mom was here, and she feels guilty, and it's only for a second, but that guilt is still there. And I feel like that may stay, but at the same time, it may begin to heal her. And I feel like that guilt that she has might go away, or it could stay. But either way, I'm sure previously she's felt way more guilty for not thinking of her every second. And that's a normal thing with grief. But eventually, you have to learn that, yeah, you still have your own life, and you the hard truth is that you can't just put it on pause. You have to learn to live life alongside the grief and to accept what had happened. Acceptance isn't the end of grief, though. It's just the transformation of the grief they once felt. It's like a different version of it, because the pain is still there, but now you can think about the happy memories and laugh about them, or you can talk about them without crying. In most tragic tales or in life, acceptance includes a symbolic gesture like spreading the ashes or completing the bucket list, saying a final goodbye out loud, or even rereading the last letter. The tragedy for the characters becomes something they want to honor, like they want to honor the person as opposed to the tragedy. We see the characters start participating in life again. We see them happy and smiling and going out with their friends again. And it reminds us that we don't have to be over it to keep living. This acceptance and stage of the story, it gives us closure because it shows that a story doesn't end with devastation. It ends with endurance and growth, and it sends a message that love leaves marks and grief leaves lessons, and healing does not mean forgetting the person or forgetting what happened. It just means that you are not stuck in that moment anymore. And it means carrying the person or the memory forward in a way that doesn't hurt you or hinder you anymore. And like I said, not all stories follow this exact line, but that's the common hero's journey, for lack of a better term, that these stories tend to follow. It's the common structure. That's the word I was looking for. But with stories like All This Time or with We Live in Time, it's going to be a different structure because of how those books are written. And in some of these stories, there might not even be a real loss, but the tragedy is through what happens in the middle. And then they grow from it and begin to heal from whatever had happened. But anyways, that's going to wrap it up for this video. I know sometimes there's a lot of information in these, so if you have any questions, feel free to just ask them in the comments and I will try to respond in a quick manner. Anyways, I will see you guys next week, hopefully for that instructions for dancing video analysis. I'm going to be reading it like nonstop every night, unlike what I've been doing, because I don't know why I did that. Anyways, I am hoping to have that up next week, next Saturday. And I am having the next movie analysis that we're going to be doing posted, I believe it's on Tuesday. So be sure to stay tuned for what movie we're going to be watching next. But until next time, stay curious and I will see you next time.